The frozen rubble cracked underfoot. 3rd Squad, 24th Panzer Division, picked through the skeletal remains of Factory District 7. Minus 38 Celsius. The Carabiner 98K rifles felt like ice bars through their gloves. Every breath crystallized before it left their lips. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber crouched behind a twisted I-beam. The industrial complex stretched endlessly around him. Shattered concrete, twisted rebar, steam pipes jutting from collapsed walls like broken bones. His squad held position, 8 rifles, 1 objective, 0 visibility. Movement, 2 o'clock, whispered Schütze Hoffmann. Weber pressed his eye to the scope. 7.9 2mm cartridge chambered. He scanned the shadows between debris piles. Nothing. Just darkness shifting between the wreckage. Then the voices started. Russian words echoed from the factory floor above. Footsteps, metal scraping concrete. Weber counted his men, all present, all silent. None of them were up there. He knew that for certain. He had walked those floors himself the day before. Empty shell casings, frozen blood pools, nothing living, nothing breathing. The voices grew louder, clearer. Combat orders in Soviet dialect. Flanking movements. Coordinate calls. Enfilade positions being assigned. "Sir, that's impossible," Hoffmann breathed. "We cleared that sector yesterday." The muzzle flash erupted from the 3rd-story window before Weber could answer. The crack of a Mosin Nagant split the air. 7.6 2x54mm round. The bullet whined past Weber's helmet close enough that he felt the displacement of air against his cheek. His squad opened fire instinctively. 8 rifles hammering the window position. Brass casings scattered across ice-crusted rubble. Wooden stocks kicking against frozen shoulders. Return fire came immediately. Multiple positions. Windows that hadn't appeared on yesterday's reconnaissance maps. Firing ports carved from debris that wasn't there 12 hours ago. 30 meters away, inside the factory ruins, Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov pressed his eye to a crack in the concrete and watched the Germans come apart. They moved like frightened animals now, hollow-eyed, firing at sounds, spinning toward shadows, exactly what he needed. Volkov's remaining 7 men had spent 48 hours carving these positions, tunneling through rubble with bayonets and bare hands, grinding through blast-softened concrete by feel in total darkness. The factory floor above was empty, had been empty for weeks, but sound traveled strangely through the broken structure. Voices from the basement bunkers spiraled upward through shattered ductwork, seemed to emerge from everywhere at once, from nowhere at once. The Germans were breaking. Volkov could see it in their movements, jerky, panicked, wasting ammunition on echoes. He pressed his Mosin Nagant against the concrete and made a careful calculation. The German NCO behind the I-beam, 93 meters, wind drift negligible. He squeezed the trigger once. Weber felt the impact before he heard the shot. The bullet punched through his left shoulder and spun him sideways into the rubble. He hit the ground hard. "Medic! Medic!" But the voices from above only grew louder, more insistent, as if the building itself was calling targets in Russian. His squad dragged him out through the maze of twisted metal and broken stone. Behind them, invisible defenders kept firing from positions that by every calculation couldn't exist. The factory swallowed their muzzle flashes, left only echoes and blood trails in the frozen air. This was Stalingrad, and it was only getting worse. The dead began to move at 0347 hours. Obergefreiter Klaus Brenner saw it first through the pre-dawn murk southeast of Caen. A Soviet corpse, 3 days rotting, lifted a Tokarev TT 33 pistol and put 2 rounds into Brenner's chest before he could raise his Gewehr 43. He was dead before he understood what he had seen. The holdouts had learned a new kind of warfare. Isolated Soviet infantry, cut off during the German advance, had begun burrowing beneath the fallen, hiding under their own dead, under German dead, waiting with weapons ready, breathing through their mouths to stay quiet, sleeping in hour-long intervals, eating field mice, drinking from canteens they refilled with whatever they could find. A panzer grenadier from the 125th Regiment, killed 2 days earlier by 88mm shrapnel, suddenly rolled sideways. The Degtyaryov DP-27 underneath him chattered. 7.6 2x54mm R rounds tore through morning mist at 840 meters per second. 3 Germans dropped before anyone could react. Hans von Luch's reconnaissance teams began filing reports. Dead men firing. Corpses that moved. The Kampfgruppe's clearing operations ground to a halt. Every body became a threat. Every fallen soldier a potential ambush. "Check every goddamn corpse," Luck ordered his battalion commanders. "Bayonet first, then approach." The psychological damage spread faster than any tactical adjustment could contain. German soldiers started speaking in whispers, moving in pairs even to urinate. Death itself had turned hostile. Beneath the rotting body of Obergefreiter Heinrich Stolz, Senior Sergeant Dmitry Volkov lay perfectly still and watched them come, his PPSH-41 submachine gun pressed against his stomach. 71 rounds in the drum magazine? He had been here since June 11th. Maggots crawled across his face. He let them. Movement meant death. The Germans moved differently now, paranoid, probing each corpse with rifle muzzles before taking another step. Good. Fear made them slow, made them predictable. Volkov had studied their patterns for 3 days. 2-man clearing teams. Senior man held back. Junior approached the bodies. That was the gap. A young Gefreiter stepped closer. Volkov could smell his fierce sweat beneath the cordite residue. The boy's Gewehr 43 trembled at the end of rigid arms. Semi-automatic. 7.9 2x57 millimeter Mauser. Effective range 800 meters. Meaningless at 2. Volkov let him get close. Real close. Close enough that through the gaps in Stoltz's decomposing ribcage, he could see the boy's terrified eyes. Then he opened fire. The PPSH-41 cycled at 900 rounds per minute. The Gefreiter was gone in an instant. "Every shadow could kill us." Gefreiter Otto. Stern wrote in a letter that would never reach his sister. "The dead don't stay dead here. We burn bodies now. Can't trust them lying still." Luck's men adapted. Flamethrowers became standard issue for clearing operations. The Sturmgewehr 44 replaced bolt-action rifles for close-range work. 7.9 2x33 millimeters. Kurtz at 800 rounds per minute could shred a suspected position faster than careful shots. They burned entire fields of dead to ensure nothing underneath would move again, but the damage was done. Fear had infected the Kampfgruppe like gangrene. Every fallen German was now a potential firing. Position. Every Soviet corpse held a possible ambush. The living envied the confirmed dead. Volkov died June 16th. Real death this time. An 88mm high-explosive round converted him and 3 German corpses into red mist without distinction. The position simply ceased to exist, but his method lived on. Other holdouts copied the tactic across the entire front. Death kept fighting long after the men themselves had stopped. The silence started killing them in November. German patrols learned to read buildings by their sound. Rats meant safety, relatively speaking. Wind through broken masonry meant the space was open. Settling debris meant recent occupation. But buildings that made no sound at all, no rats, no wind, no settling, Those buildings were already occupied. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber pressed his ear to the doorframe. His MP-40 felt slick in his gloves despite the cold. The 9mm submachine gun weighed 4 kilograms, but grew heavier every hour. Behind him, 3 men from the 24th Panzer Division waited in the shadow of a blown-out wall. Their breath came in small, controlled bursts. Nothing wasted. Nothing. The building was perfectly silent. "We go around," Weber whispered. They had learned this the hard way. Empty buildings screamed with rifle fire and mortars. Quiet buildings whispered death. The Soviets had spent weeks converting Stalingrad's ruins into a killing system. Every shattered window became a rifle port. Every basement a sniper's nest. Every doorway a channeling point leading directly into prepared fire. Senior Lieutenant Anatoly Chekhov of the 13th Guards Rifle Division had watched German patrols from his position in the tractor factory ruins for 3 weeks. His Mosin Nagant Model 91/30 had a bent bolt from shrapnel damage. The 7.6 2mm rounds still fed clean. They walked differently now, he told his spotter, like mice in a cat house. He was not wrong. The Wehrmacht had stopped talking in formation, stopped smoking on watch, stopped everything except listening and watching. Weber's squad moved through the rubble as if sound itself was their enemy. Every footstep on broken brick cracked like a gunshot. Every exhaled breath bounced off concrete in ways that distorted direction and distance. There were deeper problems than fear. Stalingrad had become tactically unrecognizable. Streets changed overnight as debris shifted. Buildings marked on morning maps had collapsed by evening. Landmarks vanished under fresh shell craters. Compass bearings led to rubble where rooms had been. The city devoured its own geography faster than maps could track it, and the men navigating by those maps paid for every discrepancy in blood. Weber's squad reached the factory district. Soviet snipers had turned industrial machinery into firing platforms. Lathes became rifle rests. Overhead cranes provided elevated positions with clean sight lines to every entry point. The Germans knew this in the abstract. Knowing changed nothing. When the positions were invisible until the shot came, the single rifle crack hit without warning. Weber's point man dropped. No muzzle flash, no follow-up shot. Just the echo bouncing between factory walls like a ricochet that never stopped. The remaining men scattered behind a burned-out Panzer IV. Its 75mm barrel pointed skyward at a useless angle. Chekhov worked his bolt smoothly, waited. He had learned patience from the city itself. Stalingrad taught you to become part of the rubble until the enemy forgot you were inside it. Wait long enough, and they would move again. They always moved. Weber counted his remaining ammunition behind the dead tank. 47 rounds for the MP-40, 2 stick grenades, 1 field dressing. His stomach cramped from hunger and fear simultaneously. The silence pressed down again, heavier than before. Weber closed his eyes and listened to his own heartbeat. In the quiet buildings of Stalingrad, that sound felt like thunder. The city was winning, not the Soviets specifically, not the Wehrmacht, just the endless patience of stones. The grain elevator rose from the Stalingrad rubble like a concrete tomb. 40 meters of twisted steel and blast-damaged walls. Soviet sappers had been working its interior for days before the Germans arrived, converting the interior into a 3-dimensional killing ground. The 88mm flak gun crews outside knew something was wrong when fire started coming from 3 different levels simultaneously. That kind of volume from prepared positions didn't happen without preparation time, days of preparation, days during which German intelligence had classified this structure as cleared. Obergefreiter Klaus Brenner pressed his back against the concrete exterior and gripped his Kar 98K. The tight spaces made the rifle nearly useless. 7.9 2mm rounds designed for 300-meter engagements in open terrain meant very little when the enemy appeared and disappeared 8 meters overhead. "Contact left," his voice cracked. Muzzle flash erupted from a hole in the concrete wall just above head height. The Mosin Nagant rounds sparked off masonry and sent chunks raining down. A fist-sized piece of concrete struck his helmet. His ears rang and kept ringing. Inside, Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov crouched in his tunnel and watched through a gap in the rubble pile. German boots moved past in precise formation, parade ground spacing even in ruins. He counted 5 men. Lead Soldier carried an MP-40, 9mm Parabellum, effective range 25 meters in open ground. In this concrete structure, effective range was essentially 0 once the geometry closed in. His PPSH-41 held 71 rounds of 7.6 2x25mm Tokarev. Rate of fire 900 rounds per minute. At 6 meters, it didn't matter where you aimed, but Volkov held his fire. The terror wasn't in the bullets. The terror was in not knowing where they would come from. He had watched the Germans grow more erratic with each hour inside the elevator. They looked up constantly, then down, then sideways. Their movements grew disconnected from any tactical logic, paranoid, reactive, the worst state to be in when the shooting actually started. His men fired 3-round bursts from concealed positions, then moved immediately to different holes through the tunnels they had carved. The Germans shot at the sounds, hit nothing but rubble and dust. "They're in the walls!" Brenner screamed into his radio. Static. The 21st Panzer Division was fighting its own battles across the city. No reinforcements, no adjustment to doctrine, just static and the echo of his own voice. Unteroffizier Weber tried to organize suppressing fire. His MG-42 cycled at 1,200 rounds per minute, hammering the 7.9 2mm rounds into everything visible. Concrete dust filled the air until visibility dropped to nothing. He burned through 200-round belts, hit nothing that screamed. The dust only deepened the shadows that already hid everything. Then Volkov's men dropped a steel beam from the 3rd floor. 200 kilograms of twisted metal hit the floor 6 feet from Weber's machine gun position. The impact sent sparks in every direction. Weber dove sideways, but felt the concussion through the concrete floor. By the time he rolled over, the MG-42's barrel was bent at 45 degrees. The gun was finished. More concrete slabs came down from higher floors. Not fired, not thrown. Gravity delivered. Each chunk 15 to 20 kilograms. Silent until impact. The drop zones were unpredictable. German soldiers couldn't establish patterns to avoid. They scattered, which was exactly what Volkov needed. Scattered men in a 3-dimensional maze with no consistent fire discipline. "Fall back to the street!" Brenner grabbed Weber's arm and pulled. They stumbled toward the entrance, heads down, moving between bursts that seemed to originate from different points every time. More muzzle. Flashes from concealed positions behind them. Ahead of them. Above. Outside, Brenner counted his men. 3 missing. The grain elevator still stood unchanged. Soviet rifles still poked through the rubble gaps, waiting patiently for the next wave. Volkov's men had not simply defended a building. They had converted it into a weapon system. The concrete breathed. Obergefreiter Klaus Weiss pressed against the Red October factory wall and felt it. Not vibration from artillery, not the structural settling of a war-damaged building. A slow, deliberate rhythm, in and out, like respiration through broken lungs. "Miller's squad went silent 2 hours ago," Hauptmann Fischer transmitted through heavy static. "3rd floor, east wing." Weiss checked his Gewehr 43, 40 rounds. The factory stretched ahead of them. Every window was an opening to something. Every shadow had depth that didn't make geometric sense. The breathing came again. The Russian sniper had been working this. Building for days without revealing a single position. No muzzle flash visible from street level. No movement caught by any observation team. Just precise 7.6, 2mm wounds arriving from unidentifiable directions. Clean holes. Professional spacing. 12 men already evacuated to Germany with wounds that told you nothing useful about where the shooter was positioned. "He's in the walls," muttered Gefreiter Hoffmann, his STG-44 held across his chest. "Shoots through solid concrete." They climbed to the 3rd floor, boots grinding broken glass. The breathing moved with them, or seemed to, grew more pronounced as they ascended, more rhythmic. Room 17 was empty, furniture reduced to geometric fragments by blast damage. Weiss stepped over a twisted Panzerfaust tube and positioned himself against the far wall. The silence felt expectant, like the pause before a door opens. Then the wall spoke, not words, a sound like wind passing through a confined space, like stone grinding against stone in a register just below what the ears could properly interpret. Weiss spun toward it with his finger on the trigger, scarred concrete and shadow, nothing else. The muzzle flash came from everywhere simultaneously, from the floor, from the ceiling angle, from inside what should have been solid matter. Hoffmann dropped. His STG-44 clattered across the debris field. The hole through his helmet was clean. A professional measurement of exactly what it takes. Weiss emptied his magazine, fired at the angles, fired at the sounds. Brass casings rang off debris in a useless cascade. The 7.9 2mm round sparked off concrete and achieved nothing except confirming that something was there. The breathing stopped. In the silence that followed, Weiss understood what the reports had been trying to describe. The Russian wasn't hiding in the building. He had organized himself around the building's broken geometry so completely that separating him from the structure had become tactically impossible. Every crack was a firing aperture. Every connected void was a movement corridor. Every sound the building made was data about where the Germans were. Position 17 cleared. Weiss transmitted, backing toward the stairwell. His voice broke on the last word. Outside, Hauptmann Fischer reviewed casualty reports through his field glasses. Another squad reduced to fragments. Another position marked in red. The Red October factory stood unchanged in the winter light, patient, still. Somewhere inside, the sniper was already selecting the next firing angle. The 88mm battery at Cagny opened fire at 0630 hours. By 0800, the landscape had become unrecognizable. What yesterday's reconnaissance had mapped as clear agricultural ground now supported a debris field of twisted steel beams and concrete chunks. Perfect cover for British armor. Perfect killing ground for German anti-tank teams. The artillery barrage had converted open farmland into a maze that neither side had planned for. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber gripped his Pak-40 anti-tank gun's elevation wheel and tracked left across terrain that refused to match his range cards. The 75mm barrel moved through a firing arc calculated for 800-meter engagements across open ground. Rubble mounds now blocked every sight line at 200. "Where's the church spire?" Weber's gunner asked. "Gone." The reference point their entire firing solution depended on had disappeared under 12 hours of naval bombardment. Every calculation they had prepared was now useless paper. Captain James Mitchell of the 2nd Fife and Forfar Yeomanry advanced his Shermans toward what intelligence had classified as cleared agricultural terrain. His map showed empty fields, reality delivered a moonscape of interlocking kill zones. Every rubble pile concealed a Panzerfaust team. Every crater held a machine gun position. Mitchell's lead tank struck a mine where aerial reconnaissance had photographed solid ground 12 hours earlier. Wehrmacht wasn't defending from fixed positions. They were fighting from positions that tonight's bombardment would create for them by morning. Whoever adapted fastest to terrain that remade itself with every artillery mission held the advantage. Neither side had doctrine for that. Mitchell's radio filled with confused position reports. Grid references led to empty air. Landmark navigation was finished. Commander Hans Zimmer in his Tiger I faced identical problems from the opposite direction. The 88mm main gun could reach 2,000 meters under normal conditions. In this debris field, effective range had collapsed to 300. Through his Zeiss optics, he struggled to distinguish British armor from the burned-out German vehicles now scattered across the same ground. "Sir, is that wreckage moving?" It was, a Churchill tank using yesterday's destroyed Panzer IV as camouflage, moving deliberately, slowly, using the debris that was supposed to be impassable as a screen. The tactical doctrine had not prepared any of them for warfare conducted among their own wreckage. By 1400 hours, both sides navigated by dead reckoning through a landscape that swallowed every reference point. The maps had become documents of a terrain that no longer existed. Victory went to whoever could function without them. The 88mm Flak 36 at Canny had been silent for 3 hours. Major Hans von Luck watched through his Zeiss, 8x30 binoculars as British armor spread across the wheat field below. Cromwell tanks, Churchill 7s, the 11th Armored Division's full strength advancing in textbook formation across ground that looked, from their position, completely clear. The Luftwaffe Unteroffizier appeared at his shoulder, rigid, sweating despite the morning cold. Herr Major, they're requesting permission to engage ground targets. The 88mm crews had their orders. Anti-aircraft only. No ground engagement without Fliegerkorps authorization. Standard protocol. Luck lowered the binoculars. The Wayne Walther P-38 cleared leather smoothly. "You will engage those tanks, now." The first 88mm round left the barrel at 820 meters per second. Tungsten core. The lead Cromwell erupted in orange flame and black smoke. 32 tons of steel became scrap in half a second. Track links scattered like thrown gravel. Inside their tanks, the British crews had no idea what had hit them. Squadron leader Davies of the 2nd Fife and Forfar Yeomanry had his gunner traversing left, right, finding nothing. The fields were empty, hedgerows and wheat. "Contact! Contact! Anti-tank gun, bearing unknown." The second round punched through Davies' turret front. The tungsten core carved through 76 millimeters of steel as if it were aluminum. He was already dead when the fragments opened his chest. Luck observed without moving. The Flak 36 could penetrate 165 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters. Cromwell frontal armor measured 76 millimeters. The mathematics required no interpretation. The Luftwaffe crews worked with mechanical precision, load, traverse, fire. Tank after tank brewed up across the wheat in sequence, orange columns of smoke rising straight in the still morning air. "Herr Major, ammunition for maybe 20 more rounds." 20 rounds. 40 tanks still advancing. The numbers had shifted. British artillery found them 12 minutes later. The 25-pounder shells walked up the ridgeline with textbook accuracy. The first concussion lifted Luck off his feet. His ears rang. The second shell destroyed the left-hand 88mm position. From his burning Cromwell, Sergeant Morrison watched a German officer in dress uniform standing upright on the ridgeline while shells detonated around him. Checking his watch, writing in a leather journal. The advance had stalled because of one man who refused to take cover. Mad as a bloody hatter, Morrison managed through broken teeth. Luck completed his damage assessment. 2 88mm guns destroyed. 17 enemy tanks knocked out. The Kampfgruppe would withdraw to secondary positions at Soliers. The British advance would resume, but it would cost another day. British records still dispute the specific tank kills from Canny. Some credit the 200th Assault Gun Battalion southeast of the village. Others point to the 75mm PaK 40 positions at Soliers. The accounting matters less than the outcome. What mattered was the pause, the hesitation that moved through entire armored squadrons like a current when positions that should have been destroyed kept firing. Operation Goodwood had been designed to break through the German lines east of Caen in a single overwhelming armored surge. 1,100 British tanks, air support on a scale not seen since the Desert Campaign. A clear run to the open ground beyond. Instead, the wheatfields absorbed tank after tank in a grinding exchange that lasted days. Tiger IIs from Epworth Heavy Tank Battalion 503 arrived after dark. Track pads grinding cobblestones. Fuel consumption 5 liters per kilometer for a vehicle that increasingly ran on borrowed time. They would hold until the ammunition ran out because there was no other option, and because by that point, holding until the ammunition ran out was the entirety of the war on this front. Luck folded his map. The 88mm crew was dead. A direct hit from a 17-pounder had ended that equation. But they had purchased time, which was the only currency the Wehrmacht still traded in. Time bought with tungsten and blood in a fields that would be farmland again someday, managed by people who had not been born yet. Rommel had said it plainly at El Alamein, said it again after the landings. The war was already decided in the strategic sense. The numbers, the industry, the coalition arrayed against them could not be overcome by tactical brilliance at any level. The math didn't allow it. But the buildings kept fighting, the ruins kept watching, the dead kept ambushing, the silence kept killing. Because tactical reality operates independently of strategic conclusions, and the men inside the grain elevators and the factory floors and the Normandy hedgerows did not have the luxury of abstraction. They had positions to hold, ammunition to manage, time to purchase, one expensive meter at a time. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.